The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com. All right, welcome back to Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
I'm Ryan Risky.
We are going to quickly go through sort of what the Bears' schedule looks like anyway. It came out a few weeks ago, so we'll sort of talk about it just a little bit. Their preseason, not that it matters. They host the Broncos, then they go at Arizona. There'll probably be a lot of Bears fans there. A lot of Chicago transplants anyway. Then they go to Tennessee. I believe that's the game that Jay Cutler makes his broadcasting debut on.
It is, yeah.
That Bears-Titans game. So that'll be interesting. I'm
Honestly,
excited to hear
the preseason might actually be interesting to watch just because we'll probably be seeing some Mitch Trubisky.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially, those first few games. And fourth game, everyone pretty much sits out. But
that'll be the game Mark Sanchez plays in, or some undrafted quarterback that they sign.
Right, some guy who would just sort of trying to make the team, but won't, obviously. Talking about Jay Cutler, are you surprised that he didn't get a, like an offer to play football anywhere, to back up? Are you surprised at all? I'm a little surprised that he didn't get an offer.
I thought the Jets could use a quarterback. I mean, they've got Bryce Petty, Christian Hackenberg, and I think Josh McCown.
Josh McCown's going to win that job. I just know it.
He probably could just not show up to practice ever, or even and just show up for the games, and he'd win the job.
Yeah, we know Hackenberg is sort of a hack. He's not nearly as good as he was hyped up to be. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty bad when his old coach at Penn State, from when he played really well, now the head coach of the Houston Texans, Bill O'Brien, didn't want him in the draft.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's a little surprising that Jay Cutler didn't get an offer that he wanted to take.
Surely, there's no teams that think that their current quarterback is better than Jay Cutler.
I guess not. Which I mean, again, isn't that a little surprising?
Mm-hmm. And you kind of wonder, if let's say Ryan Tannehill actually tore his ACL instead of just having, a sprained knee. It would have been interesting to see if Adam Gase in Miami would have wanted to sign him.
That's a good point, yeah, because they were
clearly
they were doing
him
things.
And Adam Gase clicked pretty well.
Yeah, they did. They definitely did.
You kind of think that it's just a lot of teams didn't want to deal with maybe any baggage the reported baggage of him being an awful teammate.
That's the thing. It's reported baggage. There's been some teammates that say
he's like a horrible person,
right? And then some people say he's great. Like I know Kyle Long was a big supporter.
Kyle Long loved Jay Cutler,
right? So I mean I don't know how much of that was because he was the quarterback of the team at the time, but so some people liked him, some people didn't, but that's sort of the case with a lot of people, unless you're like a star quarterback in the league like Aaron Rodgers or Andrew Luck or Drew Brees or something. Otherwise, some people are going to like you, some aren't. But as far
you see, and it's just kind of like it seems like there's no in the middle guys. Like people just hate him or they love him, and we know Brian Urlacher hates him.
Yeah,
he doesn't just not like him; he hates him.
Right.
And I mean, it's just kind of like, then you hear it's like all there's so many just reports that come out. It's like, people are like, before they played the undefeated Vikings on Monday Night Football. All the guys are praising Jay Cutler, saying he gave an incredible speech before the game.
Right.
He pumped up the team. He made sure they were going to win the game. And then the very next week, there's a report that teammates are complaining that he didn't prepare at all for Tampa Bay when they got killed. I mean, it's really unfortunate because it's all the in between stuff. Oh, Jay Cutler is great. Oh, now he's horrible. It's just some teams probably don't want to risk having that kind of media attention.
True. As far as him being a broadcaster, I think he'll be okay. He seems like he'd be pretty good, actually.
He could be. I mean, he always gave some good sound bites after games. And he had to answer a lot of tough questions.
Right, and he knows the NFL of today, which helps, obviously.
At least they're being smart, and they're not just randomly putting him on the #1 broadcast team like CBS is doing with Tony Romo. I mean, like...
that's because he's almighty Tony Romo, Ryan.
I just don't get it. Like, you just get... A guy, like, literally just announces that he's retiring, and then you give him the #1 broadcast job immediately...
I mean, I like Tony Romo. I think he'll probably be pretty good, too.
I think he's going to be really good, except like that's not the kind of job you should be learning on the fly. Right. Let's say he's like the #2 or 3 team. That's fine. Not the nationally televised.
Is he with CBS or with Fox?
CBS. He's the number.
So he's with Jim Nantz and Phil Simms? Or
Phil Simms got demoted.
Oh, that's right. Oh, man. So it'll be Jim Nantz and Tony Romo.
And Phil Simms is like under contract for a few more years.
That's interesting. I mean, that's the right move. Phil Simms is unlistenable for the most part, but so that's interesting. And then, that would be crazy if like Jay Cutler replaced Troy Aikman or something this year, and it was working with Joe Buck. That would be something. So taking a look, and then they the Bears close out the season against the Browns for the preseason.
I honestly. Think I'm going to be watching some preseason just because you want to see Trubisky play because he won't play in the regular season, and also that Tennessee game will be interesting to see what Cutler has to say.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting.
Because I doubt he'll like have any negative things to say, like how some players don't.
It's like his hometown team kind of, and the team that he played for. I think that's sort of why they did it.
Right.
I mean, he's not from Tennessee; he's from Santa Claus, Indiana, but. I mean,
his wife's
pretty close.
Hinted that she wants to move to Tennessee.
I think they did.
I think they did. I know they left Chicago.
They moved to Nashville. He played at Vanderbilt, which is in Nashville, so that would make sense. So the Bears open up the season. That they got a tough start to the season. They play the Atlanta Falcons. They host the Atlanta Falcons.
What a home opener.
On September 10th. So that'll be interesting. That'll probably be a loss. Then they travel to Tampa Bay, so Mike Glennon, in his second game, will be playing his former team. That'll be interesting. Former team that spurned him for Jameis Winston.
Now, one thing I've been wondering, are the Bears going to carry 3 quarterbacks on their roster?
Meaning Mike Glennon, Trubisky, and Sanchez?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I really...
They probably will, right?
See, I really hope they cut Sanchez.
But if somebody goes down, you're going to want Sanchez as a backup.
Let's say Glennon gets injured in the 4th or 5th week of the season. They're not going to start Trubisky.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's it's not going to be Trubisky time then. So I don't know. Not sure. I think they probably should keep 3 quarterbacks, although that leaves a spot filled for somebody else, but I don't know. Third game of the season, they're back home against the Steelers, so that's a pretty tough 3-game stretch right there because Tampa Bay is not bad. And then they play the Packers.
Well, and Tampa Bay destroyed the Bears last year.
Oh, yeah, they did. That was embarrassing. And then they're at Green Bay. That's that lovely Thursday night game in Lambeau.
Yeah, the lovely usual night game at Green Bay where the game at Soldier Field will be at noon.
Right. Yeah. And it is on November 12th. So anyway, October 9th, they have another Monday night game against the Vikings at Soldier Field. So that's 2 years in a row.
They seem like they host the Vikings a lot on Monday night.
Yeah, they've been. Well, this is 2 years in a row, and they definitely have done.
And
it
then
before,
it's kind of. I really feel like I'm gonna have to look at the previous schedules. It feels like every year it's a Monday host Minnesota on Monday night, 5th, 6th, or 4th week of the season.
Uh-huh.
And then week 17 is always at Minnesota.
Yeah, that's been the case.
Week 17 is at Minnesota.
It's always at the end of the season like that, for sure. Then they go to Baltimore. That could be a competitive game, at least. And then they host the Panthers, and the Panthers, we don't really know where they're at. They're kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like they're not as good as their 15-1 record 2 years ago was, and they're not as bad as their team was last year.
They're definitely not as bad as their team was last year.
I think they're more in between. They're definitely a playoff caliber team when you have Cam Newton at quarterback.
Yeah. And then they go to New Orleans to play the Saints. That could be a disaster, or it could be good. The Saints have a good offense, but not
usually when they play at New Orleans, it doesn't end well.
And then after that is the Packers-Bears game at Soldier Field. Then they host the Lions. Then they go to Philadelphia. Then they host the 49ers. That could be a competitive game again, like it was last year. They go to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Then they go to Detroit. Then they host the Cleveland Browns.
What a game.
On
Cleveland
Christmas
Browns
Eve.
at home.
That'll be on Christmas Eve. And then on New Year's Eve, a week later, they play in Minnesota against the Vikings.
Well, I'll say this. The home schedule this year definitely has more appealing opponents.
Yes,
because last year they were hosting Washington, San Francisco, Jacksonville, and Tennessee.
Right.
That's
I
like
remember when they played
like
Jacksonville.
the worst four teams to host.
Doesn't get much worse than that as far as fan appeal. That's for sure. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll start talking about the NBA playoffs, talk about how it's going to be the same two teams again meeting up in the finals. We'll talk about Zaza Pachulia. Was that a dirty play on Kawhi Leonard? I don't really know, but I mean, either way, it doesn't matter. Spurs weren't going to win. So we'll talk about the NBA playoffs, and we'll also talk about the Bulls and what their plans are. Coming up next, Sports Renegades, SportsTownChicago.com. The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.